All right, welcome to Book Club. I'm Dylan, here with my friend Keith. 10 fingers and 10 toes. What's up, buddy?
Just a quick note to the listeners. The conversation of the drunk is only interesting to the drunk. A few glasses of wine can be the difference between finding a man hilarious, companion, or an insufferable moron. So, to all the listeners out there, please get inebriated so you actually think this is good and worth listening to. Any other notes for them, D-Man?
Is that a quote from the book?
Yeah.
There's lots of good quotes in this book. Well, here at the Buddy Book Club, we're breaking down some bestsellers, and this week we'll be discussing The Blade Itself by Joe Abercrombie, which was published in, I think, 2007. If you'd like to recommend a book for us to read or reach out to us on any past episodes, you can visit our website, buddybookclub.com, or slide into our DMs on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Buddy Book Club Podcast. You can listen to us on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, so please download and subscribe. You said we didn't really bring it necessarily for Slaughterhouse 5, and looking back, I kind of think that as well. It was a little bit heavy and a little odd, and definitely like a high school book. We both liked it, but
it's hard to get passionate about something when it's talking about the deaths of thousands and thousands of people. And
kind of why we stay away from that, just because we can get kind of bogged down in the reality, unless you're Matthew McConaughey's book, which is out there. I still am never going to forget that he said he made a treehouse that was like 120 feet in the air or something like that.
Yeah.
But this one, The Blade Itself, has been in the hopper for a while. As I've said it before, I love me some sword and sorcery, so I'm excited to dive into this one with you. I heard it was dark fantasy or something like that, or it's supposed to be like, imperfect characters that, the moral ambiguity kind of thing, as opposed to Lord of the Rings, where these are obviously good guys, these are obviously bad guys, the good guys are all good, the bad guys are all bad, and we just have it out, which is phenomenal, but this is a little bit different. Joe Abercrombie's first novel, and the first novel in the First Law trilogy, 4.2 on Goodreads, and I don't know if you knew this, but it was based on the quote from Homer's The Odyssey, or named after, I don't know, based on, but the quote is, "The blade itself incites to deeds of violence." Anywho, let's get into some stock up, stock down. That's what we're here for. Keith, stock up, what do you got?
Yeah, stock up, not being a morning person. Glockter, who I think his name is spelt like a Boston accent person saying
Glockta.
It's Glockta. His morning routine really makes you rethink waking up on that Monday and being like, oh God, hungover, maybe you get a couple Sunday pops. Really makes you rethink your life and how bad it is when he's waking up and he basically just can't get out of bed because he's in so much pain and he's just like suffering so much. But there's also something that he reveals there too, which I wanted to ask you a question of. What would you rather have every morning? You wake up, you basically can't get out of bed for 15 minutes, so you're in so much pain. Or every morning you wake up, you shit yourself, which is Glockster did both of. So which one would you have every morning if you had to choose?
It's more about the cleanup with the poop in your pants. As I, coming on my 5-year anniversary of the last time I pooped my pants, the experience isn't so bad, but it's really the cleanup effort is tough.
If you're doing it every morning, I assume the shame kind of leaves, too. You don't really have the same shame.
No, the shame would persist, for sure. I mean, someone's coming in there every day to, have to deal with your sheets and, oh, my God, there's poop all over these? Is there anything worse? I'd rather it be throw up.
Have you ever woken up, if you've ever had the flu or something, and you've sweated in the bed, and it's just, a puddle? You just want to, jump off a bridge after waking up in that. It just starts the day so bad. Can you imagine waking up in your own shit? I just call it a day and be like, I'm not doing anything today. Just the day's over.
Yeah, I'm going to go for the 15 minutes. It's also probably a good way to not waking up in pain, but just, spending 15 minutes to kind of stretch yourself out, get ready for the day kind of thing. I did enjoy how you started that off being when you wake up on a typical Monday hungover. That's the thing. I just get wasted on Sundays every day. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I wake up on Monday. I don't drink Sundays usually, but I wake up Monday hungover. We're past that age 30. You just hungover from a one slice of pizza too much last night. I'm hungover, or I just didn't get my beauty sleep. I only got 8.5 hours.
Oh, I like that. This new age way of saying hungover. Because if I'm not in bed by 10 o'clock, then I'm hungover the next day.
So yeah, I'm in bed by 10 o'clock, but I'm not going to sleep till midnight just because of the Sunday scares. I still get that. I thought it was alcohol driven. No, it's just I hate Mondays. That's all it is. That's what I figured out.
You got a case of the Mondays. My first stock up is Caleb Williams. So
first round pick, first overall pick, probably.
Exactly. First round pick, first overall pick. For those that don't know, he's was a quarterback for the USC Trojans. He's got it all. He showcased his talents and his offensive acumen over the last couple years. people are really excited to see this guy enter the NFL draft and presumably go to the Chicago Bears. Now they got assets. Basically what I'm saying is that there's a ton of potential with this guy. Ton of potential. And that's kind of how I feel about this book, The Blade itself. In itself, this book, it wasn't a standalone book. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The end of it, a lot of times when we read these trilogies, like these fantasy trilogies, they leave you wanting more, but they also kind of close up something that happened during that book. This wasn't like that. It was more of like an intermission. It was like the forming of the Fellowship of the Ring. It's like, and this is the Fellowship of the Ring. And you're like, okay, cool. And if the movie just ended there and you had to wait another year, I'd be like, what the fuck? So what I'm trying to say is that the book left me wanting more. It wasn't a complete novel. I'm not upset about it because I did like the book itself, but it set itself up in a way that there's a ton of potential going forward, and it's almost like too much potential because I'm scared it won't live up to it.
100% agree. I mean, we've said this before about other books that have ended in similar fashions. If Star Wars just ended with nothing happening, it would have been like, well, this movie sucks, you know? You kind of need to end that first book. In my opinion, you should write it with the intent that I'm not writing a sequel. And then if it's amazing, then you write a sequel. If you think of Mistborn, I don't think they kill like the main dude at the end.
No, yeah, he doesn't. The Emperor or whatever.
It ends the portion of that book, and you're like, now there's options to write the second one. The Emperor doesn't die, Darth Vader doesn't die in Star Wars. However, you're invested because the story ends at least.
The only one I can think of in terms of like a fantasy thing where we read was N.K. Jemisin's The Fifth Season.
That was my biggest complaint of that one. Oh, there's a lot more complaints
and
to that one.
The problem with that one to me was that the characters weren't as fleshed out as they were in this. Like I was not invested in it whatsoever. I really couldn't picture it necessarily, and that's probably just us though too. Like a lot of people seem to have liked that book. It just didn't hit with me, but that's when I remember where nothing really happened, and then I was like, wait, this is over? Like what? And I didn't want to read the second one. This one was more of just like a long intro, getting the characters really fleshed out, and then now we're going to go on our epic quest.
If I had it my way, I think it would have been either the first 10 hours is basically the first book of what we just read, and the second 10 hours is them on the adventure, or you almost just start it when like the dining hall scene was like awesome. But you almost start it there, and then you flash back to how they got there as they go on the adventure, which a lot of other
when they do
stories will
the
do.
Baez play. That one?
Yeah, so they all come together, and it's like, you almost feel like, who are all these people that have come together in this one room, and now they're going to go take off in this adventure, and then you kind of flash back to like, oh, who they are, and it's why they act this way. So you almost get a backstory as you're going, because then you're kind of on the adventure, instead of just being like, all right, there's going to be an adventure coming. It's coming. Don't worry, it's coming.
Yeah.
Book's end.
I did find it was kind of
like,
interesting that this book was 25 hours long, and granted, I was doing a lot of yard work as I was listening to it, so I wasn't quote-unquote bored anyways, but at no point did I feel like it was dragging.
The last quarter of it, it really seemed to pick up steam. There was no point though where I was like, I need to keep listening. Like I can't stop now until the last quarter where I was like, all right, let's go now. Now I'm ready. And then I would start getting worried. I was like looking at the time, being like, wait a second, what's going on here? We're going to get to what we need to get to.
Yeah. All right, we're going to talk more about this stuff, I'm sure. So what else do you have for Stock Up?
Well, I'm going to keep it right in the football world since you were using those analogies perfectly. Stock Up Brian Dawkins, a.k.a. Weapon X. Have you seen these clips on YouTube before, his highlight tape?
Yeah.
So one of my favorite videos of him is interviewing him and like his personality, and they're like talking about his like off the field and on the field. And he turns into Weapon X, which is like Wolverine, essentially, when he goes on the field. Outside the field, he's like this very religious, very humble, doesn't curse. Everything he does is very, very
interesting,
genuine, and super, super nice guy. He also went to Clemson, Harvard of the South. So you can tell he's intelligent. He's just a super nice dude. And then on the field, before the games, he starts speaking in tongues. He starts literally going crazy. He oils up his muscles to make them look good, so he looks insane. And he starts speaking in tongues. He starts speaking to the ball. There's no like There's times where the camera hasn't been following that just catches him just talking to the ball, where he's like, we're gonna play well today. I need you to be on my side. And he's just like whispering to the ball, and then he starts speaking in tongues.
Someone's got to tell that guy there's like 12 different balls they play with in a game, so he's got to go. His sideline, he's got to go to the other sideline, get their balls.
He just turns his whole different personality, and I loved it. I love the video, but that's what the Bloody Nine was. When he turned on that switch, I literally was laughing. I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. When he just turned that switch and became that psychopath, I mean, that was great. It was sucked that was the last hour of the book that happened. So I'm like, where was this the whole time?
Yeah.
Give me Bloody Nine. Where is
we got Logan Nine Fingers, who's like super nice and like probably the most kind person. Not just nice, but like actually kind person in this book. But then
you didn't understand his history either. You're like, I don't really see this guy being the guy that won 10 duels. It doesn't really make sense to me. And he's like, everything's luck. You know, I just get lucky sometimes. I was like, yeah, I guess so.
And then he turns into the Bloody Nine, and it's like, some guy's Weapon like, do you know who I am? He's like, you're the next one to die. It's like, all right, shit.
When he headbutted the guy and they described it as a woodpecker,
yeah.
I was like, what the hell?
Just kept headbutting him over and over again. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's a psychopath. I loved it.
Well, it's funny you say that because my next stocked up was named men. Which is a thing.
We're on the same path today. Yeah. Let's go. I have the same one, but go on. Yep.
Which is just like a thing for the Northmen in this book. Some of the Northmen are named men, and I think you have to win some battles or you have to do something to distinguish yourself. I mean, we got the dog man who just has a great nose. You know, he smells out the other guys. So it's like, all right, he's the dog man. Got it. Logan Nine Fingers, pretty self-explanatory. We didn't learn a lot about the origins of some of the other named men, but being a named man it's just badass, and I'm not sure why we don't have that in our culture. I feel like even in sports, it's fallen off. You did use Brian Dawkins as Weapon X, which I appreciate, but we used to have Babe Ruth, the Great Bambino, the Colossus of Clout, and I was trying to think about who we have today. I never thought of Brian Dawkins as a good one. And honestly, all I could think of was the Oracle of Omaha, like Warren Buffett. Which is...
Wait, what?
Warren Buffett. He's known as the Oracle of Omaha, which is a great nickname. The named man. That's not bad. But can you think of any other ones? I mean, you already shared Brian Dawkins, so...
What's the distinction between... Because I said stock up nicknames. What do you think the distinction between name man and nicknames is?
A nickname is just a thing where a name has to be due to something, like something you did. For example, in American Pie, the one guy who has to go home to poop every time, he can't poop at school, his nickname is Shit Break because he has to take a shit break during school, which I appreciate. That is a named man. You know, it's not like it's a nickname, but it's a name because of a deed.
I don't know the distinction between that and the nickname.
It's due to a... Well, if you're saying my nickname's D-Man, that's just like my first letter of my first name plus man.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, so it's an action that's created a new nickname for that person.
Yeah, like our friend whose last name is Puccio, we call him Pooch. That's not... If he walked around and barked, that would make more sense. But that's just a nickname.
Like the mailman, Carl Malone always delivers.
That's a good one. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, that was my stock up. Amen. Let's do more of it, people.
I'll add too is that the group of it was Dogman, Three Trees, Black Dow, Thunderhead.
Yeah.
And then Forley, the weakest.
Yeah, I felt bad for Forley.
Yeah. The only thing I would have commented on is like, give me more of them. I didn't really want to hear about Luther anymore. I've said this before, but I don't care about a character that just complains all the time, which that's what Luther was. He was getting handed everything in life, and he was just still complaining. And I was like, all right, I get it. This guy's a huge bitch. I don't want to hear any more about him. Give me these guys. Give me these 5 guys. What they're doing in the woods.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was excited for them to meet back up. It almost seemed like they were having a side quest. But now they've seen the Flatheads. They know these Flatheads are coming for the Northmen, so they go to let Bethod know, hey, Bethod, just FYI, I know we're not on good terms, but I just want you to know, like, these Flatheads are coming for you. And instead they just kill our boy Forley and screw our guys over. But the good thing is that now their mentality is we have to go fight Bethod no matter what, even if we're fighting for the Union. And I think I'm almost certain that in future novels we get a lot more of that group. My last stock up was Game of Thrones, and I feel like this book may have taken some inspiration from Game of Thrones, just in general of a king of the north and the Shanka or the Flatheads who we're talking about. They're a humanoid race similar to orcs, kind of, I guess, but they live mostly in the north and want to kill everything. Sounds a lot like White Walkers to me. I'm not saying at all that Joe Abercrombie ripped off George R.R., but I do feel...
I was thinking it was more like the Mistborn creatures that the Emperor had built, right? The things that the skins like peeling off and things like that, right?
the Koloss.
Yeah, Koloss, yeah, and all they do is attack. That's all they're like known for, and that's what it sounded like these people were as well, right?
So maybe it's somewhat of like a ubiquitous thing throughout fantasy, but more of my stock up was just that, and really not stock up to Game of Thrones, but at this point, I think Game of Thrones, there was like a break in between books, and he took long breaks between books. So if you were a Game of Thrones fan at this time, like 2007, and you stumbled upon this, it would have really scratched an itch for you, I think. So stock down. What do you got?
Getting compliments, stock down.
Okay, you're a big compliment guy. You know, you're really good looking.
Thank you. All right, never mind. It's back to stock
you
up.
Said thank you. You didn't do like a, nah, you know what, actually.
Sometimes you need it, kid, okay? It's nice to hear once in a while. I've told you before, like, I got complimented in 2008 on a shirt color I wore, and that color, like blue, looks good with your eyes. And I was like, oh, okay. And then every single thing I bought from then on out to this day is blue. All it takes is one compliment, kid. That's how rare they come to get.
It's honestly really true.
I guess it's stocked down in this instance because compliments can kind of make you a little bit set in your ways, or not have that hunger. This is a quick snippet in the book, so you might have missed this, but they're talking about the Great Hall of like the banquet hall or whatever, and how there's a stage built there, and the reason that they built it is different kings have used different things for it. So there's like entertainment, or some use it for torture. But by far the best one was one of the kings hired people that looked like his enemies, and during breakfast they would just hurl insults at him, and he would just like shit on him, and the reason he did that is to keep that like the hate and anger in him.
It was I do remember that, and I was like, wow, this is Michael Jordan right here. It's exactly
this is exactly what you need. Brady would do the same thing, all the greats. So really appreciated that, and keep the hate coming, and keep the anger, keep that fire in the belly.
Keep that fire in the belly, indeed. My first stock down, and it's been discussed on this pod before, so you might have to Google it if you're not familiar, because I'm not going to explain it, is edging. So that's what it's called, right?
Correct. Okay. You know what it's called. Get out of here. Come on.
So to me, this is a whole book of edging. You think something big is going to happen, and you're waiting for the moment of the clouds and the rain, see Shogun, but nothing ever comes, literally.
Big difference too is instead of being 2 minutes, it's 20 hours.
Yeah,
so
that's some tantric love going on right there. And it's all entertaining and definitely a page turner. But for what I assumed was going to be an epic story, it's not. It's pretty small in scope. We're really just dealing with Adua here in terms of this whole world. The vast majority of the story happens in Adua with like some brief moments in the north. And anytime that something kind of gets going, even the fencing matches, I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be like a Knight's Tale, and like it's going to be built around this. But then they skipped a couple, and it was just kind of like flash forward to him winning. And the last one, I mean, it was interesting, but it wasn't epic at all. And then they get to Baez comes to the city, and he's like, okay, I got the key to the house of the maker, which hasn't been opened in centuries. It's like, something's going to be in there. This is going to be crazy. And they bring out a box. It's like, that was it. Don't go down that way. No, don't go down there. All right, take this box. Let's go. What's in the box? What's in that box? And then our boy Glokta from Gloucester, at the end he's sent away to a city that's fighting the Gurkish. We don't know who are the Gurkish. We don't know anything about them. We just know that like they held Pharaoh, and I think they were the ones that had Glokta in prison, because I think it was the Emperor of Gurkha or whatever had Glokta as his prisoner. So it seemed like at every step we were going to get some crazy stuff going down, especially with a cold open of Logan Ninefingers fighting off a bunch of flatheads and then jumping off of a cliff, which was another potential stock up for me, is like falling off of a cliff. He does it. Aragorn does it. I think Indiana Jones has done it like 30 times. It doesn't do anything. Just jump off a cliff. Nothing bad can happen to you. Never, ever happens. So back to my edging though. It didn't fulfill that need that we kind of talked about earlier, but at the same time, I liked every minute of it. I really enjoyed it.
It had some Lost vibes with it where as you got further and further into it, you thought, okay, some of these questions will be answered, and it just more questions became apparent. Wait, there's more wizards? Oh, and they're going to this weird hall, and then, it just keeps on opening up.
Yeah, especially when they're talking about Baez, who's the first of the Magi. He had his teacher or whatever, then these, like, the first people who are the first creatures in this land, or whatever the case was, and the idea of the first law being don't touch the other side. They go to the other side to pull magic over because the other side's where the demons are. I was like, oh, okay, like, this is going to be cool because there's going to be something along with that, but we didn't necessarily get it. And Lost Vibes is a good take on this because so many seeds were planted that I'm hoping that we can sow them all, but it's also like there's so many seeds that I kind of forget a lot of what they were trying to sell me.
You almost forget which questions you haven't been answered yet or not.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was like, oh, that was interesting, but I'm probably going to forget about it immediately.
And we also don't know none of the motives for why this crew isn't even in the crew, and we're 20 hours into the book, you know what I mean? Like, which is fine if there was some story that was resolved, but... Yeah,
obviously Baez handpicked them to be in this crew, but for what purpose? And... I mean, it all makes me definitely want to read the second one because I liked the characters so much. And I think that's something that we haven't really necessarily talked about, but maybe we'll talk about later. So what else would you have for Stock Down?
Yeah, the last one is just standing out in a group, Stock Down. You just never really want this. I've realized because either you're the worst in the group and everyone just makes fun of you, a.k.a. Forley the weakest, or you're the leader and everyone expects you to know the decisions and then you have all the blame. So I feel like you're just in the middle of the pack and you're just kind of... You can be the one making fun of the person below you. You can be one blaming the person above you.
Yeah, middle management.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Just passing the buck everywhere you can. Not my fault as the person that's below me that messed up. We'll have to get rid of them. Or, not my fault you're not getting a raise, the person above me. That's just the key to middle management. Yeah. That's all it comes down to.
Exactly. That's a good take. I like that.
Yeah, thank you.
It's always going to work for me. Shit rolls downhill, but if you're somewhere in the middle of the hill, sometimes you can dive out of the way. If you're at the top of the hill, you're pushing the shit. And if you're at the bottom of the hill, you're getting smushed by shit and you're living with it.
Either way, you're not waking up with it in your pants. That's the key.
That's the key to life, really. My last lockdown is long-term commitments. So I've been dancing around this too, but I like this book and I do want to know more about these characters. Will Logan, our infamous barbarian, meet up with his buddies? Why did Baez decide to come back to the city like now at this point in history? What's his plan? What's the deal with Pharaoh? Why do they need her? What was it that she heals fast or something? She's her own version of Weapon X. And she can't see colors. For some reason, that matters. I don't know why that matters. But she seems super badass. I really wish we had more Pharaoh. So I'm hoping... We've barely hung out with her at this point, so I'm hoping we get a lot more. And then I'm at this point, at the end of this book, I'm like, all right, cool. I'm ready for this trilogy. I'm ready to finish it. I'm not doing any trilogies or series at this point. I could be into this. I go look it up. It's not only one trilogy. It's 2 trilogies, plus like 20 short stories. Oh, did I say my Stock Down was long-term commitments? Because I am not in a place in my life to make that kind of commitment. When I say this, I'm talking about books, obviously, not relationships.
That's why I started laughing first. I was like, wait, what?
And I loved Mistborn and Red Rising, which were both trilogies. But it took me a year to get through each of those because I like to mix it up and see what else is out there. And I've also been burned before. I've dived into promising trilogies, just to get disappointed at the end after investing like 60 plus hours. Don't get me started on Game of Thrones. I was obsessed over it for years. I read them after they had come out, so like I was kind of reading one after another, but they still took so long to read because they're massive books. And I've been left standing at the altar by George R. R. since. So I will finish this trilogy, but I really hope it gives me the closure that I need.
Well, I will say just doing a quick look at the ratings of the next 2 books, 4.4, 4.3.
Oh,
so
okay,
higher than the first one. So I mean,
yeah.
The only thing is the problem with like that is that if you didn't like it, you're not going to read the second and third. So it doesn't really, that's the only problem with the sequels is that you never know with that.
And then my last quick one, Stock Down, is the golden rule, which is treat others as you want to be treated. It's not enough, honestly. We need a second rule like they have in this book. Don't eat human flesh. Maybe it can be the silver rule to the golden rule. Eaters. There's eaters in this book, which they get powers. They get like magical powers or something from eating human flesh.
Maybe it should be the 8th rule.
So yeah, I think there's only 2 laws that we know of so far. One is don't go to the other side, right? Or like don't interact with the other side, which is the rule number 1. And then rule number 2 is don't eat people. So pretty straightforward, honestly. Although Logan has magical abilities, like talks to spirits.
I was just smoking the ganja, I'm pretty sure, right? I think that's what he would smoke something and be like, "Whoa, what's up, man?" And then, like the spirits were like never giving an opinion on anything. So I was like, "You're just talking to yourself."
He held that fire in his mouth and then spit it at that guy in order to chop his arm off, which I thought was pretty badass. So the Bloody Nine has got tricks up his sleeve. You gotta be careful. Did you have a favorite scene? I mean, you talked about Luther's...
I like the dinner scene a lot. That's when things started to finally kind of click. I just love a scene where one person knows they're in the right. You just wait for it to play out.
Yeah.
I just really liked the Baez. The scene ends with him breaking the dude's chair, and everyone's like, "Nah, that's fine. That's just normal." I was like, "Wait, what? Doesn't everyone think he's a wizard now, or is that just?"
How are they still confused?
Yeah, I didn't get that part, or the fact that there clearly is magic because they went to that house, right, and they like. It's just in the middle of the city, and like no one can go in there. It's a door that's locked. There's no key or anything. But if anyone goes near it, they get sick. So there's something going on there, like, right? I don't know.
Could be like Chernobyl.
Yeah, just a nuclear bomb went off, so they're like, "Wow, we got to stay away from this thing."
Yeah, it seems like it's like one of the peaks of the castle. It's in the castle itself. It's just like it's not a house that's just like sitting there. You know what I mean? It's like up high in the castle. But yeah, I do agree. The thing is, though, that magic hasn't been seen for so long that people just forget that it's even real. And the idea that the real Baez is here, considering there's been so many people who have said they're Baez. If it's like a portly old guy who's bald, you're not like, this is the greatest wizard of all time. Or the greatest magi of all time. You're just like, this is some guy who's putting on airs. I could see their skepticism, but especially with Glokta, when he sees that bomb go off in that place, he's like, the thing exploded, dude. I don't understand. Well, he obviously didn't see the explosion, but the idea that he went and tested everything out with the scientists or whatever and said, how much of this explosive powder would it take to go through a 4-foot wall? And the guy's like, what? Too much of that's even in the Empire. So yeah. I feel like he's a smart guy. He should figure that out.
Well, I think the problem with Glokta is he's been trained to automatically. I mean, they prove that. Well, like everything he does is this person's guilty. Now let me find how they're guilty, which is like a terrible way to be an investigator. So I know he's supposed to be smart, but I also think he's kind of been trained to be an idiot. The traitor was like right under their nose, and he didn't even consider that. Like the most obvious answer would be, the one person that has access to the slip of paper is the person that is the bad guy. And he was like, nah, it can't be them. It's got to be someone else. Like, that's a little weird.
My favorite scene, I think, was the Logan and Pharaoh when they fight off the Inquisitors, the Inquisition or whatever. That was the practicals.
Amazing.
It felt like a fight scene from Mission Impossible or like a Daniel Craig James Bond movie or The Matrix for that matter. It was just brutal and awesome. You know, it's like going from building to rooftops, then into some field, to then back into a building, and then they're stuck, and just brutality ensues. So I thought that was awesome, especially that it culminated in them getting back to the group, the Inquisitor showing up, and Baez coming out of the bathroom naked, being like, what the hell's going on here? And then turning one of the practicals into pink mist.
Scene.
And just like popping them into pink mist. And it was like, all right, so we got to get out of here. I honestly don't know how Logan can move after that, though. He was torn to pieces. So they're like, we have to get on a ship now. It's like, he needs a surgeon. This guy needs, he needs to be in a hospital bed for like 10 days. So it was awesome, though. I really enjoyed that.
For sure.
What about your character? So the thing I think that I loved most about this book in general, and maybe I'm spoiling my love, but the characters are so well established. He spends so much time fleshing out these characters. You know exactly who they are by the end of this book, where I hope then we can just like get onto the plot devices and whatnot. But their motivations as well, what drives them. I thought that each one you felt was interesting, but in its own way. I almost felt like it was kind of hard to pick a character because between Logan, Glocta, Luther, I'm with you. I didn't necessarily like him as a character, but I appreciated that he was there. The author was able to put him in there because this vain guy, I feel like he's going to get his comeuppance a little bit or get humbled a little bit, and then maybe change his tune. And then obviously Baez, who's wonderful in his own right. So, and Pharaoh, who we barely even met. But who do you like?
Yeah, I think once Baez tells Luther, yeah, the only reason he won is because I made you win. That's gonna humble him real quick. So I'm looking forward to that. Baez is my favorite.
Oh, okay.
This is kind of probably a trope at this point, but any wizard at this point, I feel like it seems to be old, babbling, humorous, underestimated dude with a good sense of humor that all of a sudden can turn dark real quick, and you're like, oh shit, this person's super powerful and super scary. That's Gandalf, that's Dumbledore, that's even Yoda. Those are the they're all bumbling weird guys that and then they're you fuck around and you find out real quick.
Yeah.
All three of them love ripping pipes. They just fucking love the devil's lettuce. So I think that's in your future, D-Man.
I don't know about Yoda.
30 years from now, you're gonna just be ripping pipes, being funny, then you get on that pickleball court, and woo, people are gonna find out real quick.
I got pickleball tomorrow at 6:30 in the morning. It's gonna be.
This kid's dedicated. That is very dedicated.
Yeah. Some people invited me to play. It was 6:30. I was like, "What time?" It's 6:30. I'm like, "You know that you're 40 minutes away from me." I was like, all right, well, I have to go with Glocta. I honestly think he's one of the best characters.
Very original.
I've read. Yeah, I can't think of a greater character that I've read because he's just so interesting. He was an upper crust sword fighting prodigy that the world comes crashing down on when he's wounded and then captured at war and tortured relentlessly. I also think the audiobook, we both listened to the audiobook, the narrator does such a good job with all of them, but especially him, because the thing we forget is that Glocta doesn't have many teeth. They did a fucked up thing where they basically Gollumed him, where they broke the top or bottom tooth, but never two in a row. So you don't have a matching top tooth to your bottom tooth, so you can't eat things. It's so messed up the way they torture it, but the narrator gives him a lisp that's perfect, I feel like, for his character. Glocta is miserable, but he's also hilarious. You get so many inner monologues with him where he's having these quippy one-liners too, and he feels like he's the smartest guy in the room surrounded by idiots, but also doesn't want to live anymore. He's done with life. And then you see his other side that he didn't even know he had when him and West have that moment towards the end. Glocta felt like, I'm on an island, it's just me against the world, and I really don't care if I lose. And then Colin West, who's his buddy, they have that heart-to-heart. And I feel like Glocta's taking a little turn here. So, yeah, I just thought he was the most interesting, the funniest, and also I think you're underselling. I think he's got a pretty keen eye. So,
okay.
Yeah.
No, I like that take. That's pretty good. I also thought the audiobook guy did a really good job because he does that lisp when he talks, when he's thinking, in the conversations, he'll be wanting to say something, he doesn't say it. You knew when he wasn't actually speaking because he would talk normally. So that made it so you could actually understand when he was talking versus when he was wanting to say something he didn't say.
Next level job by the narrator. I will also burn my hate here, though. When he did Glocta and when he did Chamberlain Hoff, he sounded a lot like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And what's
point.
funny is they both say excellent a lot, which Mr. Burns says. He goes, excellent. And so it was exactly it took me a little bit because the beginning is a lot of Glocta and Chamberlain Hoff, those the political scenes or whatever. And I was just all I hear is Mr. Burns in my head. Love, hate, love. What do you got?
Yeah, I think we did a lot of them already, but love, you mentioned Glocta. One thing I don't think you mentioned was I do really like that someone that has been tortured is the only one that should be torturing other people.
Okay.
Someone that's been to war should be the only one sending people to war, because if you experienced it, he's like, Listen, I've fucking been through this, so
Yeah.
fuck you, you know? So I actually can respect that. Someone that's tasted their own medicine can dish out the medicine.
He's been so humbled that he doesn't even care anymore. People, someone would be like, "Oh, I feel pain." He's like, "Pain? Do you know what pain is?" It's like, I shit myself in the morning when I wake up. Like, he'll straight up say that to people, and he hates stairs. He hates stairs so much, which is
Yeah,
great.
that's his real enemy.
His
Yeah.
real enemy is stairs. So yeah, I said that the characters, like I said, I love that. And then my only other love here was there's just funny lines and situations that happen, mostly between Glokta and Baez. I feel like they were the key contributors there. But in a fantasy genre, I guess, that's kind of a bit dour, as they say in the book, it's nice that you don't necessarily think, oh, there's going to be these like uplifting comedic moments, but Joe Abercrombie found ways to fit those in, and they were always enjoyable and didn't feel like he was like stuffing something that was kind of funny into a scene that didn't really need it. It brought some levity to it. It was nice.
You definitely felt like you were transported into this world and into these characters' heads. You didn't just think like, okay, this needs to get to the next plot point, which I know we're criticizing that for the same reason, but at the same time, like you mentioned, you really do wholeheartedly know the characters because you just like feel like you're in the shoes all of a sudden. You don't think, all right, this is just to get to the story.
Yeah, on the whole, I mean, we've been griping a little bit about the plot points, and I think that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment for this book. But on the whole, I liked it a lot. I don't think it's going to break my top 10 or anything, but I liked it enough that I really want to read the next one. I really like the characters. I think he did such a good job setting them up that now I'm excited to see them go on their journey, and hopefully it fulfills it. I think it's almost something that should be lauded because he was able to make such a interesting fantasy story without a lot of the fantasy adventure elements that we expect from a book like this.
Again, that's one of the biggest things we've criticized, or at least I have in the past. Hey, I need a story out of here, and if you can keep me entertained and saying, you know what, I'm going to give the second one a chance here too. After not really delivering a true, full, complete story, that's pretty impressive.
What about hates? Don't say plot.
I think I've done most of the hates. I didn't really understand. You already brought up the artifact. I'm getting that. I had no idea what was really going on with that scene. That was a little meta for me, or something going on there. I don't know what happened.
Well, they got a seed, and for me, I thought the seed was going to be like a child or something like that. Like, like seed of his loins kind of thing. But it was just like, I think there's like an actual seed in a box. I don't know exactly. Maybe they're going to grow a beanstalk and climb up and fight a giant. So yeah, there was some of that stuff I didn't necessarily between that. And then I thought the political stuff was good in that it showed us what's happening in this main capital in terms of like who the players are. But they ended up finding out it's this law firm or whatever that might be behind a lot of this corruption, but who's running this law firm? Like the people don't exist. I honestly wasn't really invested into that storyline. Maybe that's going to change, but yeah, I don't know. Like the whole corruption aspect doesn't really interest me a ton.
Yeah, I agree. I also thought the fencing stuff there was just not much stakes in it. I didn't really care about Luther that much. It wasn't to the death. It was interesting that Baez was able to help him win, but we don't know for what reason, so it was just like a lot of buildup for not really good payoff, in my opinion. And I was a little disappointed that the only character that seemed likable and, wanted to root for was Wes. But by the end of the book, Wes was like the worst character. I was like, oh, this dude sucks. He basically is constraining his sister, but not helping her in any way. Didn't save her from her dad, then chokes her out at the end of the book. I was like, oh, so this guy's the worst fucking dude ever. So like, he just went from being someone that you're like, finally a character we can like and root for, to, oh, this guy's the worst.
He has his own complications too, which is what I like about all the characters is, he's a guy from a far flung place who's now rising up in the ranks, but doesn't have the name to go along with it. So he feels a ton of pressure to do that, but he doesn't realize that he's probably one of the best people because he's actually fought in wars. He's fought in battles before, and all these rich, pompous assholes, kids who he's going to be taking to war, don't necessarily believe in him, and he's concerned about that. Like, will they listen to me? But I think he's gonna shine.
I'd like a Luther over him. Luther at least he is what he is. I'm a selfish, everything's about me.
Look at my job.
Yeah, there's no veneer. It's just that's what he is. Whereas Wes pretends like he's like, oh, I had to work super hard. I did all these things. But all he cares about is himself. He's just as selfish as Luther, but he pretends like he isn't.
Yeah.
He pretends he's different than them, which he isn't. He's not different than them at all. If he was born in the same station that Luther would, he'd be Luther. Like, that's what you realize by the end of the book, and it's like, oh, okay, so this West dude kind of sucks too.
Yeah, and I agree with you on the joust stuff too, just mostly because we have somewhat recently read Rage of Dragons, which is the book I was talking about earlier. And that's all about joust scenes for the first half, and those are so awesome. Just so good. And a lot of that people do end up dying. Okay, Keith, this was The Blade itself. Would you recommend it?
Yeah, I think we always say if it's like multiple books, it's whether you'd read the second one. I would read the second one. I think we already lamented about the disappointments on some of the things. I think, it was good enough to get me interested in the second one. When we'll read that one, not sure. But yeah, I would say yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we have tough time making long-term commitments because we have a few different books in the hopper. But I might put it on as my side piece for a while. I need a new side piece. So after listening to a book I listened to this book Outlive, which is basically about how to lengthen your healthy life and also just your life. It's a bit heavy, honestly. Very scientific, but also I'm like, wow, I'm probably going to die. So,
but you're trying to live longer? Like, what are we doing here? I mean, what?
Trying to live better.
All right, fair enough.
I want to play pickleball till I'm 95. I want to be out there crushing people.
Smoking that pipe and going out there and crushing, like I said earlier.
Yoda doesn't have a pipe.
Yeah, he does. He smokes in the first, puffing on something.
Really?
Maybe I'm making that up. Yoda smoking. These are all memes. Yeah, these are all memes. I don't know if they're actually real.
I think he's like in his hut. He might be like cooking something, or there's just like smoke happening. What planet is that? God, I'm fucking losing my Star Wars knowledge. I gotta step up.
Dagobah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Well, maybe he wasn't smoking at it, but I remember smoking in my mind.
Yeah, I would recommend The Blade itself. I thought it's very different than some of the other like fantasy stuff we've read, and in a good way. I'm excited to read the second one. I honestly am. I want to get back with these characters. Basically, I missed hanging out with them. Keith, what do we got coming up next?
We got The Three Body Problem coming up next by Liu Cixin, Cixin. So that's probably completely butchered.
We'll find it on the internet and we'll make sure during the actual podcast we know this person's name.
Netflix show coming up for that one.
Yeah, so we decided because of this Netflix show coming up, which is interesting because everything I've read about this Netflix show is that it's a total disaster. So
oh, really?
We'll see. But I've heard
the book is good though.
Yeah, so have I. And I was out to dinner with a friend, that just from work, not like an old friend from work who I didn't even know. And we somehow started talking about books as one naturally does. And she was like, you got to read The Three Body Problem. So it was one of those, I heard it from her and then I saw it was on Netflix. Then you said someone had suggested to you. So it was like a rule of three. We had to do it. So
yeah.
All right. That was The Blade itself. And we'll catch you all next time for The Three Body Problem. Keith, talk to you then.
Alrighty.
Bye now.
Bye now.